Welcome back to the latest episode of the Sons of a Pitch and American Soccer podcast. In tonight's episode, we're going to go over some listener feedback, check in on some headlines around the USMNT camp call-ups, get an expansion update, and then in the second half of our episode, we're going to round up all the action in this week's MLS games, including big upsets in both the East and the Western Conference.
Lots of upsets.
Stay tuned for that, and thanks for listening. This is Nick Pateras for the Sons of a Pitch and American Soccer podcast. Thanks for coming back to us, and I am joined here with my good friend and fellow host, Michael Yalmy. Mike, how was the long weekend? Happy Labor Day to you and all our listeners.
Yeah, you as well, sir, and the listeners. It was a great weekend. Lots of chilling out by the grill, getting a little yard work done, getting ready for this crazy fall and winter we've got coming up here.
Chilling out and grilling out. I like it. I unfortunately did not get to grill, but did get to do yard work. So, the worst of both worlds.
Oh man,
I
yeah,
guess.
that sucks.
That's all right. It was at least I got the day off work, and for anyone at my company who's listening, I really don't care because you got the day off work too. So. Works out for everybody. We hope all of you listeners enjoyed the long weekend. We hope you took advantage of Labor Day. Also, to all of our listeners and fans, and to everyone down in South Florida, Orlando City fans especially, hopefully everyone is doing safe and has either fled the area or has braced and bunkered down, getting ready for Hurricane Dorian. So wishing everyone the best of luck. Oh, you know a thing or two about Florida hurricanes, don't you, Mike?
Living in Florida for a few years there, I know all about the hurricanes. And this guy's taking a northern turn towards the upper Florida area as well as the Carolinas and whatnot. So poor people in Bahamas, they got hit with it pretty rough. But other than that, I think everybody in Florida is going to be okay.
Well, that's good to hear. At least some good news out of all of this crazy weather that's been going on. So again, listeners, thank you for joining us. Thanks to everyone who has found us on social media. That is the best way to get in touch with us, to join the discussion. Follow us along at SOP Soccer on Twitter or on Facebook at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, or we are even on YouTube now.
We are.
Mike, what are you doing on YouTube?
Yeah, so it's been a few days now since I did my picks and predictions from last week. I have not come up with the full tally on it yet, but it was rough. With the upsets that were in place, it did not look good. I can tell you that much, but I'll get the full tally up here probably in the next day or so and put my picks and predictions out for next week.
So thank you to everyone else who's subscribed, who's viewed, to at Let's Talk Soccer 2, to the STL_podcast, Soccer Talk Lads. They're big fans of soccer down there in St. Louis, and they got the announcement recently that they'll be starting play in the MLS in 2022. We'll touch on that in a minute as well. Also, thanks to DJ Jason Brower and to Inter305 for following us along on Twitter and contributing to all our discussions there. Next thing, as we teased into the episode, we're gonna touch a little bit on the USMNT here, Mike. I totally forgot about all the other stuff I wrote in my notes.
Well, also thanks to DJ Jason Brower and to Inter305 for following us along on Twitter and contributing to all our discussions there.
Also to Chaz Boateng and Jason Brooms for subscribing on YouTube. Thank you. Please leave your comments. Let us know what you want to see in the videos and exactly what you think about Mike's picks. Good or bad. We'll take all the feedback.
We'll take it.
And finally, I just want to remind our listeners, coming up towards the end of September, down in Miami, for all you soccer fans who just can't wait for Inter Miami to begin play, there is the All-Star Futsal Tournament. You can go to www.futsalallstar.com and get tickets. It's going to be played in Marlins Park. Tickets are as low as $20 a piece. You will see the national futsal teams from the U.S., Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil. There's more details on the website. We covered it in a little more detail in our last episode as well, so make sure you go back and give that a listen. But futsal, high energy, high everything.
High
like
intensity,
it's intensity.
man, yeah.
That's the word. High intensity, high energy, fast paced, really great technical ability. So you folks down in Miami, at the end of the month, are going to treat yourself to some quality quality international futsal down there. Well, Mike, as we teased, let's get right into the soccer talk. Biggest news around the American soccer landscape recently has been the USMNT call-ups, the national team call-ups for the September international break. And the United States has a couple of friendlies coming up. September 6th, this Friday night. Friday. No, okay.
We're not close enough to Friday yet.
No? Okay. Friday night, September 6th against Mexico, and then the following week on September 10th against Uruguay. Two excellent teams in the Western Hemisphere. Obviously, El Tri is your biggest competition in CONCACAF, and Uruguay, no slouch. They have had an excellent footballing reputation for the last 100-plus years or so,
Yeah.
hosting and winning the first World Cup, and I think they even won the second or third World Cup as well. So back, we're talking 1930s, 1950s here, but it just kind of shows you the history that this country's had. Great youth programs, great international players, Cavani, Suarez, a little earlier on, Forlan, a guy that I love to emulate if I could. So excellent matchups for the United States.
Now,
Mike.
did you say international break?
I did say international break.
Okay, so it's an international break. It's a FIFA window, but it's not really a break for MLS because MLS has decided we're going to play through that international break with a few matchups here for some of these teams in MLS, which is a little surprising. And there's some more some feedback from some of the players, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show.
Sure.
But a couple great matchups for the U.S. with Mexico and Uruguay. Should be exciting to watch. The roster, pretty good roster. Definitely some surprise inclusions, some surprise exclusions. But this matchup, these guys coming into the squad, you've got, starting out with the goalkeepers, you've got Jesse Gonzalez from FC Dallas, Brad Guzan from Atlanta United, probably getting one of his last few runouts with the U.S. national team, Sean Johnson out of New York City, and then Zach Steffen playing over for Fortuna Dusseldorf on loan from Manchester City.
So I got to imagine that Steffen and Johnson are going to be your two starting goalkeepers. I think Brad Guzan is going to kind of be utilized the way Michael Bradley was in some of the earlier friendlies this year.
Right.
More of a veteran presence, kind of give the guys what to expect, how to prepare for these big international games. By the way, how to prepare for Mexico. A very intense rivalry game. Everything's intense tonight. I'm feeling the intensity.
Nick is intense.
I'm feeling intense. It's definitely not the alcohol talking. So Brad Guzan can kind of give them that veteran presence, that calming mindset, and then let's just let their play on the field do the talking, right? These are the two guys who are probably your 1 and 2 moving forward. And then you've got the young buck, Jesse Gonzalez, first time being called up to the senior squad.
Yeah, locking him up is all I can see here.
Oh, is he a dual national, or is
I
just kind
believe
of
so.
getting
I
him?
believe so. So they're just trying to lock him up and get him in place would be my guess.
So then maybe we do see him get capped, maybe a
Could be.
halftime substitution or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, depending on how the game's going. But in front of the goalkeepers, anchoring the defensive line, an interesting mix of players here. John Brooks, Reggie Cannon, Serginho Dest, Nick Lima, Aaron Long, Daniel Lovitz, Tim
Who?
Ream, Miles Robinson. Hang on, we're going to go back to that. Walker Zimmerman. So I'm ecstatic that we've got Reggie Cannon. He's clearly proven himself, especially in the Gold Cup, that he belongs and he needs more time. I am ecstatic that Serginho Dest is getting his first call up. One, yeah, let's lock this guy up. Let's cap tie him. He's a Dutch international as well. He's been playing really well for Ajax recently, and for a young American player to be starting for a club like Ajax is a huge, huge benefit.
Yeah.
A huge accomplishment that we can't pass up. So I'm really happy that those two guys are there, and I think between Walker Zimmerman, Miles Robinson, and John Brooks, like out of those five, you're probably going to see your starting four, unless Aaron Long has a better kind of partnering with one of the other guys. But as I went through that lineup there, Mike, as I went through the names on the list, you had a reaction to one of them. You kind of jumped out of your seat here a little bit when you heard Daniel Lovitz.
What is going on? Why is he still in this roster? Like, Berhalter, what are you thinking? Daniel Lovitz is trash. I'm sorry, but he's garbage. He could barely make the roster with TFC, got moved in the expansion draft. They brought him back for some ungodly reason. I don't know why. And then he goes to Montreal, and he's played okay, but, I mean, this is a team that hasn't made the playoffs since he's been there. And
Not that that's all on him, but
no,
it's indicative.
Right, exactly.
They
And-
give up goals.
Yeah, they do. And what is he thinking? I mean, what does Daniel Lovitz have on Greg Berhalter? Is there some type of blackmail piece that he has? Like, he's like, I'm going to ruin your life if you don't pick me. I mean, I'm in shock. I don't understand why this guy is on the U.S. men's national team roster. I mean, this is a squad that wants to be known and compete with world powers. What in the hell is this guy doing on the roster?
We've been saying it since Berhalter took over the men's national team almost a year ago, and he's had Daniel Lovitz on all of his rosters since he's taken over. I'm like, all right, maybe he's a system guy. Maybe he's a good locker room guy. But at this point in time, all of that is out the window because you need to be developing some of your younger talent. You know there's other young defenders out there in the American system, the U23s, the U20s, or just in academies or playing in the MLS. Guys like Serginho Dest, who are out there playing in Europe at some of the other divisions, not just your big four.
Right.
You gotta call these guys up and get them into camp. Like, you brought in Dest. Like, we're going to talk about it a little bit later. Pomykal finally gets a call-up. Jackson Ewell gets a call-up. And then you've got Josh Sargent, who finally gets his opportunities with the United States now to make some noise in some big international friendly matchups. Like, why you're wasting a roster spot on Daniel Lovitz, who hasn't even gotten into your other games. He's just been a body on the bench most of the time. I don't think he's ever started under Berhalter.
No, I don't think he's started.
And I know he's got into a couple games, maybe 30, 40 minutes tops.
Yeah, nothing meaningful. Right.
So why is he still here occupying a roster spot? I don't get it.
No, I wish I knew.
Listeners,
I really do.
Does anyone know anything about Daniel Lovitz and why Greg Berhalter likes him so much? I mean, his name's Lovitz, but I kind of hate it.
Please,
I'll be honest.
Please enlighten us.
And that's my dad pun for the night.
Woo!
Yeah, Berhalter might love it, but I kind of hate it. Let's move on to the midfielders, Mike. Let's get out of this. Well, you know, before we get Tim Ream, I guess I'm okay with it. The guy, he's a decent defender on the international level, but as Twitter has pointed out, as anyone who watches his game has pointed out, he makes that one screw-up every game.
He does.
And fortunately, it hasn't come back to bite him
yet.
All the time. He's given up a couple goals because of it, or given up a couple opportunities because of it. I just don't know. Maybe this is a test. Maybe we'll see. If he screws up against Mexico a few times, maybe his days on the USMNT are numbered at, just under 40 caps.
Could be.
But he's playing at Fulham, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing at a decent club, but when does it come down to the talent that's on the field, not necessarily the club that they're tied to or, some other ungodly reason like with Lovitz? But, you've got a good base with Zimmerman as well as Aaron Long, John Brooks in the middle. I think they're pretty solid in the middle from that standpoint with this roster. Then it just kind of comes down to the wings, right? So Reggie Cannon, Serginho Dest,
Nick Lima, everyone remembers some of his earlier friendly call-ups and just kind of waiting for him to try it again. So we'll see if he gets a little fire lit underneath him after being snubbed the last couple call-ups.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the midfielders now. You got Sebastian Lletget, your guy.
Yeah.
He's definitely, Nick loves some Sebastian Lletget.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to USMNT.
I can wax poetic about Sebastian Lletget. Thanks, Mike.
Weston McKennie, Alfredo Morales from Fortuna Dusseldorf, 13 caps, no goals, but I personally have not even heard of this guy. Have you heard anything about
Alfredo Morales? No, I kind of was a surprise name for me. Yeah, coming over, playing in the Bundesliga, no surprise an American is playing over there.
Right.
But as far as his American call-ups, I don't know much about his game. I don't know, what he'll bring for Berhalter. I can only imagine he's kind of that young and up. Well, I can't even say young and up and coming talent. He's 29 years old, so maybe Berhalter is going to give him his moment and say,
see what he's got. Yeah.
Impress me in these two games. Otherwise, we're moving on.
Could be.
But hey, with everything else on this roster, is Berhalter the moving on kind of guy? I don't know.
Doesn't look like it. Paxton Pomykal from FC Dallas, Christian Roldan from Seattle, Will Trapp from the Crew, and Jackson Ueel from San Jose Earthquakes. So a very heavy MLS presence in this one, right? You got Leggett, you got Pomykal, Roldan, Trapp, Ueel. That's a pretty heavy midfield compared to what the U.S. usually has.
Right. Well, what I've been reading is that Will Trapp, this is kind of his last run with the U.S. team. That, Bradley is now out. I think that's a noticeable change. Michael Bradley no longer on the USMNT roster. Probably not going to see him again unless there's a rash of injuries. And that's assuming he even wants to come at this point. Because you're telling me something here, Mike. You're telling me something here.
I don't think he's quite done yet because the fire is definitely still there with Bradley. So there was a big press release that came out, and Berhalter was questioned about it. And they're like, wow, no Omar Gonzalez, no Altidore, no Bradley. What's going on here? And Berhalter said, hey, I spoke with the club team, Toronto FC. They're in the middle of a playoff race. They've got a couple games during this window. They're playing Cincinnati as well as New York City. So they've got 2 games, a midweek game and a regular Saturday game during this window. So he's kind of doing the right thing for MLS and for TFC and saying, hey, I'm not going to take these guys out during that time. So Bradley was pretty pissed about it because he knows he's at the end of his rope. He knows there's not much time left, not many games left for him. He's not going to be part of that cycle, come qualifying time. So he's a bit annoyed about the whole thing that MLS is playing inside this international window, right? It's an international break, as you alluded to earlier in the show, but it's not really because some of these guys have to play 1 or 2 games during this break. So, look, as a TFC fan, I'm happy about it. I would prefer to see Bradley, Altidore, and Gonzalez on the sidelines for TFC and playing in those games than playing in some meaningless friendlies against Mexico and Uruguay.
Right.
But it is annoying from that standpoint as well when you've got some guys that could be on their last few games with the U.S. national team and they can't play because they've got MLS games. It's interesting, but I don't think I'd write them off quite yet. I think they're probably going to play a part in the next year or so. But once we get into the qualifying cycle, I think they're pretty much done.
So that kind of leaves a void of leadership in the midfield that you hope that Will Trapp can fill. I think he can do that. I don't know if Weston McKennie is developed enough, both from a locker room standpoint and on the field standpoint, where he can take charge of the midfield. I really think that's going to be Christian Roldan's role, is that he's going to kind of be the captain of the midfield. Let Pomykal make his plays. Let Trapp kind of help out on the defense and maybe play a few diagonals and long balls as the Berhalter game lends itself to. But I think it's going to be Christian Roldan really kind of driving the motor from the midfield and sparking a little bit of the offense and kind of pushing things forward. You were talking about Sebastian Leggett and how I've got kind of no love lost for him on the national scale. I will say this, though. He's struggled with the USMNT. He's had injuries. So I will admit that, and I will admit he's underperformed for the Galaxy this year, which is kind of where my sarcasm came in earlier. But the dude's a grinder. I mean, he's going out and he's busting his butt every game. The results aren't there, unfortunately, for him. So we'll see how integral he is in these couple of friendlies and what he can prove to Berhalter and the fan base especially.
Yeah.
And then we will see how he works in when you get a full roster, when you bring some of these Americans who are playing overseas back into the mix for some real meaningful games.
Yeah, so let's move to the forwards. You got Corey Baird from RSL, Tyler Boyd from Besiktas, Jordan Morris from Seattle, Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent makes the cut, and Jossie Zardes up front.
So what jumps out to me is Tyler Boyd, young player. Again, maybe they're just trying to cap tie him. Maybe they're trying to see.
He's
what
already
his,
cap tied.
Oh, because he had some New Zealand interests. He had dual citizenship with New Zealand, so
yeah, but in the Gold Cup
they got him.
Done, yeah.
They took care of that in the Gold Cup. Thank you, Mike. I have such a short-term memory here as we're podcasting. But the guy had a decent Gold Cup. He had some flashes. So I expect he gets at least 45 minutes in each of the games coming up. Corey Baird, only 3 caps. He's hot and cold for RSL, but as he goes, so goes RSL's scoreline. So we'll see if maybe he can bring some of that goal scoring ability to the international level. What are your thoughts on the rest of the strike team ahead?
I think it's pretty strong. I mean, when you get Pulisic as considered a striker, I'd probably put him more in that midfield than I would a striker.
He's a winger. He's a winger,
more of
definitely.
a winger guy. But, Josh Sargent, guy had an amazing goal for Werder Bremen. Check that out. If you haven't seen it yet, look at it. That was impressive. Nice little flick.
Off his foot, off his chest, then Deeks goes around the goalie. Or no, Sombrero's the goalie,
Yeah.
up and over the
Yeah.
goalie, and then taps it in.
It's just a beautiful goal. Jossi Zardes, I mean, look, it is what it is. Zardes, I can't see him. He's not the answer, right? For when you're going up against the Mexico, when you're going up against the Netherlands or in Italy, that's not the answer. Zardes is not going to get the job done.
If you're playing a lone striker, then it shouldn't be Zardes. As much
Right,
as I've liked him over the years, and I've liked him in Columbus, and anyone who's listened to the podcast or read my tweets, I'm a fan of Zardes.
Right.
But if you're going to play a lone striker, I don't think he's the guy to do that. If you're going to have dual strikers or maybe like a staggered striker, one pushing up ahead of the other, then have Zardes there because he's got an excellent first touch. He can really distribute and see the field well. He can bring more players up into the attack with his vision and with his distributions. But if you're going to play that sole striker like you might have to get Pulisic on the field as that winger, then maybe Zardes is limited to what he'll do.
Yeah. So, all right. So we see this roster here. What is your 11 for, if you were starting a game against Mexico with this roster, who would you have, say, going in a 5-4-2 formation?
Sure. 5-4-2?
5-3-2.
5-3-2? All right, good. You're the accountant.
Kind of like
Big
a
on numbers here.
5-4-1,
Yeah, I get
5-3-2,
where you're going.
USMNT style.
So if I'm playing to win the game, not so much development. Like if I'm going to pick my best 11, starting from the back, Zach Steffen in goal. From this player pool is I'm assuming what your question is. From this player pool, I'm going to put Walker Zimmerman and John Brooks in the middle, center defense. I'm going to put Cannon and Dest on the wings.
Okay.
In the midfield, we're taking another 4 midfielder players here. Roldan, McKennie, Pomical, and Uil. I mean, it's not a very defensive-friendly midfield.
No,
I'm trying to press. I'm trying to put pressure on Mexico and put pressure on Uruguay. And then for your strikers, Pulisic and Sargent.
Okay.
That's my 11. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, so if I had to go with 11, I think he's probably going to go 5 at the back. And with that, I would probably put Dest and Cannon on the wings, John Brooks, Aaron Long, and Walker Zimmerman in the middle. Midfielder-wise, I think you got to go with Roldan kind of at the back over Trapp, and then probably I would say Leggett and McKinney, possibly Paxton Pomical, and then up front having Christian Pulisic and Josh Sargent. I think that's probably the best 11 for this side. I don't know if we'll see either one of our 11s here, but check it out, watch the games, and see what they end up coming through with. And hopefully they'll take a little something from Sons of a Pitch.
That would be wonderful. But at the very least, hopefully they take away a win from Mexico, because that
would be nice.
To me,
MetLife Stadium in New York.
No, they're in East Rutherford, New Jersey, Mike.
Well, yeah, okay.
It's New Jersey.
The New York Giants, the New York Jets Stadium in New Jersey. I get it. Sure, the Red Bulls, but it's not at Red Bull Arena. It's at the big stadium because it's Mexico.
Which, it's kind of funny, on the USsoccer.com page for the September roster that we're looking off of here, it's got friendlies against Mexico and Uruguay, and then on the bottom it says, "We are the future," but it says it in Spanish. It also says the future is us, in English, but you're playing Mexico and Uruguay. I don't know why you would be promoting whatever it is. It is what it is. It's just kind of interesting that
It's almost El Futuro.
we're the future. We're the future, apparently.
Okay.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to jump into a couple other headlines. We're going to give you an expansion update right now. And Mike, this was something that you mentioned that I had to go look up to find about Inter Miami.
Yeah, so it was a interesting headline on MLSsoccer.com. for Argentine midfielder Ezequiel Palacios. Apparently, this guy's at River Plate right now, and he's getting a lot of interest from overseas as well as Inter Miami. And it's kind of the question: well, does he go to Miami or does he go to Arsenal or Madrid, or one of those huge clubs over in
Which
Europe?
he has been linked to
He has
already.
been linked to those. So it's interesting. I think from a player perspective, I think the right choice is to go to something like Miami, right? You get here, you're playing a few seasons in MLS, you can show off, become a big name player like a Miguel Almiron, right? I think it is something that's very similar. Almiron had some interest from some of those bigger clubs before he came to Atlanta. And everybody's like, he's going to Atlanta? What? Now, I don't know if this guy's on DP level like Almiron was, or if he's kind of like a young DP or a TAM player. But the guy's at River Plate. He's getting international interest, and it's good to see that MLS is in that conversation. This isn't one of your crazy Inter Miami like Edison Cavani or Ronaldo or any of these crazy rumors.
Cavani
right?
apparently
Suarez.
is not as crazy, but yeah,
Well,
I know
right.
what you mean.
But the big name guys, this guy's not a huge name, at least us here in the United
Not
States.
yet. He's
Not
not
yet.
like.
Oh, okay. But I think that's the answer. Come to a Miami instead of going to one of those clubs, getting loaned out to Denmark, or a lower club in some of these smaller European
Yeah.
leagues.
Come to Real Madrid. Go play in Portugal for a year.
Right. Exactly. So it should be interesting though that the fact that MLS is starting to get recognized on that same level with some of these younger players
Yeah.
is definitely a step in the right direction. I think that's what really stood out to me the most out of this article and who knows, it's just a report. We don't know if it's going to happen, but it's good to see that we're on that sort of level with these younger guys where they're starting to think, hey, MLS, get loaned out through some of these bigger clubs. What should I do? Maybe MLS is the answer.
A couple other expansion updates from St. Louis and Nashville. So right now, you've got a St. Louis club in the USL who is sitting 11th in the East. And I was reading over their website recently, and on their FAQ, it said, no, the USL team is not being promoted. So based on that, it looks like they're just starting from scratch. They're going to just build a brand new team. Maybe some of those USL players make their way onto it.
Maybe.
But this is not an FC Cincinnati situation where the club is just moving to the MLS. They are planning on building new stadium, new organization.
Well, it's a different ownership group.
It's
completely different squad. It's a completely different team. St. Louis FC is a different organization than the MLS group, the ownership group that came in.
So make sure that you're all aware of that. And right now, everything else is just preliminary. Really, it's just like their FAQs right now.
Oh, yeah.
Just giving
Yeah.
the info out. They're going to start play in 2022. Nashville, on the other hand, is second in the East in the USL, third overall in the USL. So they're having a good USL season. But again, I think it's similar to St. Louis where they are not being promoted.
Right.
I don't know if it's a different ownership group or what the situation is there. But
Well,
they're
we know
building a
there's
separate
no
roster.
promotion and relegation in MLS, right?
Okay,
we
well,
understand that.
Well, let's use my.
And I would assume that most of our listeners do too. And if you don't, there is no promotion and relegation
You will
in
say it
MLS.
that way.
We've talked about this in the past. There's lots of information out there. You want to talk about ProRel for USA or ProRel for MLS or whatever the hashtag is.
Sure.
But look, it's these squads. They've got to start somewhere. And a lot of these guys are going. They're kind of seeing what is going on in these cities, as far as USL goes, and then they're saying, "Oh yeah, I mean, look at Cincinnati. They had a great run. They got brought up. St. Louis. They've got a strong fan base. They've got a soccer hotbed. Lots of history there. They're coming up.
So it's almost
not
like you're
quite
moving
promotion.
leagues. You're
Right.
taking your team and moving leagues.
Right.
So St. Louis is not. They're starting a brand new team.
Right.
Nashville, I don't know with any certainty.
yeah.
I think they are building a brand new team because they are already saying, "Hey, we only have 6 people on our MLS roster." So I'm assuming they're building a new team. But what the news out of Nashville is they recently acquired Hani Mukhtar as their
Okay.
first designated player. He's currently with Brøndby IF of the Danish Super League, and he'll be with them until January. Then he's going to come over to Nashville. Now this guy, he's a German national. He came up with Hertha Berlin, and either in his time at Brøndby in Denmark or he was on loan to Salzburg in Austria, Red Bull Salzburg. The guy's played in 3 Europa tournaments.
Okay.
Now, for our listeners who aren't familiar with European soccer, that is the second tier of international European competition. So here in North America, we've got the CONCACAF Champions League.
Right.
Just like in Europe, they got the UEFA Champions League. Well, the second tier of that is the Europa League.
Okay.
So this is continental football, this is international club football, and whoever wins the Europa League automatically qualifies for Champions League the following season. So there's a lot on the line from money, from prestige, and what a lot of teams do is take this Europa League run and then translate it into success next season. A little extra money, a little extra signing, a little extra exposure, things of that nature. So this guy's got some really good experience playing all around Europe. He's also gotten, I think, 30-some goals and 20-some assists in a handful of seasons.
I've heard the name before.
So
I don't know a lot
good
about him,
stats.
but yeah, I've heard the name. Definitely looks like a good signing. Look, you got 3 DP spots. If you're going to go with all 3 right away, it's a good signing.
And he will join a couple of MLS household names, Anibal Godoy and David Accam, playing
Yeah.
with Nashville. So they're they're putting together a decent core to begin with there in Nashville. We'll see if it translates to results, because we said the same thing about Cincinnati a year ago. But that is kind of the expansion update of things. Mike, anything else? Any final thoughts on these expansion teams?
No, I think there's lots to look forward to in MLS over the next few years. A lot of big cities coming into play with Nashville and Miami. So it'll be exciting to see what happens. St. Louis, but really nothing else in the expansion front. It usually doesn't start happening until that off season, right before they start the league. Cincinnati had made a few more moves, in the beginning, during the season last year before they started this year. But I'm sure anytime any more information comes out, we'll definitely get it out to you. And appreciate the expansion love from Inter Miami, following us up those few the Siege and Inter 305. Keep checking us out, and we'll keep bringing you the news.
And with that, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get back to all the league action from the last week around the MLS.
U.S. Open Cup final. As we were recording, Atlanta United, your 2019 U.S. Open Cup champions, beating Minnesota 2-1 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Atlanta with another championship of some sort, whether it's Campeones Cup, MLS Cup, now U.S. Open Cup. They're getting it done. They're winning trophies in Atlanta. Darren Ailes likes to post lots of pictures of him sleeping with trophies. That's cool. But
Who's Darren Ailes?
he's like the president or GM or something. I don't know what his title is, but all I see on my Twitter feed is him sleeping with trophies and saying, "Good night, Atlanta."
You mean actual trophies? That's
Yes.
not like a metaphor or a double
Yeah,
entendre.
no,
he's
he's
actually sleeping with the
yes,
trophy.
he's
Okay.
actually in bed with his suit on, with the Campeones Cup and with U.S. Open Cup, and I mean, whatever. It's a marketing ploy.
Yeah, I guess you can't argue with the on-field results.
Hey, you know what? They're getting it done. They're winning trophies. This team has been extremely successful since it came into the league, and they continue on with another big win in the U.S. Open Cup. So
Heartbreak for the Loons, though, man. They felt
It
like
is.
this was their moment.
yeah,
And
you
just
know,
couldn't find the equalizer.
just couldn't get it done. It was close at the end. They got a couple great chances. Almost got the equalizer to take it to extra time penalties, but it didn't happen. Atlanta, your 2019 U.S. Open Cup champions. So, taking it to Wednesday, the all-Canadian matchup, Montreal Impact hosting the Whitecaps of Vancouver. And this one, Montreal gets it done. 2-1 victory for Montreal. A good victory for them at Stade Saputo, taking out really a struggling Vancouver side. This one, Vancouver got on the board first through Yordi Reyna. Then Daniil Henry, my buddy from TFC, God bless him, with an own goal. He's had a few of those this year. He's had a few of those in his career. And got Montreal on the board there to tie it up. And then Maxi Urruti just a couple minutes later to take the lead, and that was all she wrote. Montreal with the victory. Another solid 3 points to help them in their playoff push in the Eastern Conference.
Maybe it was Daniel Lovitz's holding the Vancouver Whitecaps to just one goal that really impressed Greg Berhalter to get him up on that national team roster. You know,
that was it. That you figured it out.
It
Nick.
must be it, man. It
That
must
was
be
it.
it.
Yep.
Montreal Impact, who are still below the playoff line, just a point behind TFC, despite having played 2 more games than TFC. So, advantage Reds on that one.
Yes, Montreal's got some work to do. They do have a lot of home games left. I think out of I think they've got like 4 games left. They got 2 or 3 of them at home. I think 3. So definitely have a little bit of an upside there. But it's going to be tough for them to get into the playoffs. Hopefully they'll, they did the coaching change. Hopefully that'll work for them.
Speaking of work to do, the Red Bulls got some work to do if they're going to get themselves into playoff shape here. They're currently sitting, after all of this week's results, in the 5th spot, so not a terrible position to be in, but they're not playing good soccer right now, Mike. They lose 2-0 at home to the Colorado Rapids. They're at Red Bull Arena, giving up a brace to Jonathan Lewis, getting one on either side of the break there. And I'm going to try and throw in some more sporting phrases like either side of the break and gets a brace as we continue through this recap here. But Jonathan Lewis, no one's going to doubt his ability. He's a solid player for the Rapids for the MLS. But for the Red Bulls to be kind of lacking any sort of offensive firepower, the way they press, the way they look to spring their strikers on quick counterattacks, it really makes you worry where the goals are going to come from this last month of the season and going into the playoffs. So good for Colorado. You're getting these moral victories. You're not going to make the playoffs, though I don't think technically eliminated.
No, not eliminated yet, but they're close.
But yeah, they are down 30 points.
Yeah, 30 points out of 28 games played. They're only 3 points ahead of Vancouver, who has officially been eliminated. Look, they're not getting into the playoffs this year.
So
it's not happening.
Good for the Rapids, but
it's the new coach bump, man. They had Robin Fraser, their new coach, the assistant from TFC under Vanny, a good, solid MLS coach. We talked about that last week on the episode. And they went into New York. I think New York probably underestimated them a bit. And so it was a surprise.
Are you saying then Rapids got the new coach bump, so we need to fire Chris Armas in New York? Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Hey, man, a lot of people on Twitter were talking about that. They are not feeling the Chris Armas thing right now. Look, slow down. This team set the MLS record for points last season under Chris Armas. And now are they, that record's probably going to get broken by LAFC this season. But still, it was a great season last year. I don't know what it is this year. I think BWP is just that much older. He hasn't been starting all the games.
Had some injuries.
Look, they're okay. They're still sitting in the 5 spot. Probably going to make the playoffs. Are they world beaters? Are they going to win MLS Cup? Probably not. They could go on a run. Who knows? But everybody's kind of jumping the gun there a little bit. But it has to start somewhere.
They need to develop another striker, and then maybe they can use that system.
Right. They're thinking Brian White is the guy. I don't know if he's quite the guy, but that's enough of that. Moving through to Columbus Crew hosting Chicago Fire.
Another one of those great old school Midwest matchups.
Yeah, I mean these
from
are
the early days of the league.
2 old school teams right here. You got Columbus original team, Chicago Fire damn near an original team in '98. Yeah. And,
but don't tell that to Fire ownership, who are going to move the team and rebrand everything. Don't tell that to them, Mike. That this is an old school team with a lot of history, a great culture.
Do you think they're
an
going to
iconic
rebrand the
logo.
team? I don't think they're going to rebrand the team.
Don't tell that to them. Well, they don't want to be compared to the TV show, Mike, because their marketing is second rate.
Yeah, well, that's
I'm
that's
sorry, getting a little too honest here. Apparently, let's get back to the game, Mike. It was a 1-1 draw. But did you get to watch this? Did you get to watch what happened throughout the 90 minutes of this game?
I did not. I did not watch this one.
Mike, good. You'll save yourself what little hair you have left here, buddy. Columbus was all over Chicago for large stretches of this game. And Chicago, it's that same old story that just annoys me as a Chicago sports fan, where they don't take advantage of early opportunities in the game, and but for a last gasp, stoppage time, ridiculous header, they salvage a point. And again, it was a very underwhelming performance from Chicago. Solid performance from Columbus, who's just kind of fighting for pride right now. I doubt they'll make the playoffs, and even if they do, I don't think they have enough in them to actually make a run. but it's that same old Chicago. We can't capitalize on our chances early on. We got to fight to come back. We only play better when we're down. And they did just enough to get that 1 point and still stay relevant in the playoff race and not get Paunovic fired for losing to a terrible team. You've seen it with the Bears. You've seen it with the Cubs and Sox. You've seen it with the Bulls. They do just enough to stay relevant and maybe not make any sort of major changes to the organization, and it's worthless. You're in sports purgatory if you're a Chicago sports fan. That's pretty much it, and the Fire are embodying it this season most definitely.
Look, Columbus has been kind of hot lately. They've been getting some results.
Not like Paris Hilton, that's so hot, right? I feel like, oh, that's kind of hot. Yeah, that's so hot, right? Columbus?
Hashtag
maybe?
Paris Hilton.
Hell is real. Maybe they take a little of that heat from
Paris
hell.
Hilton's name in 3 years, bro.
Hey, I am just all sorts of pop culture knowledge over here on this side of the microphone, Mike.
Okay, we need to move on. So Montreal, a team that just comes off a midweek win over Vancouver, hosts a struggling DC United squad.
And Daniel Lovitz proves why he's on the U.S. MNT roster in this result, right? No.
No.
What happened?
I mean, hey, they got a clean sheet, so I guess there's that, right? Look, Montreal did not get a clean sheet. It was DC that got the clean sheet, and DC United wins 3-0. A struggling DC squad goes into Stade Saputo in Montreal and just beats them down. I had Montreal in this game. I thought that they were going to continue their little run of good form, and no. DC United just laid it to them, took all 3 points, 3-0. It wasn't even close from the get-go. And DC with a much-needed 3 points. This team is a team that's really been falling off. They were at the top of the East. Now they're down, sitting, just holding on to one of those last home playoff games, even after this win. And they get it done against Montreal.
Yeah, we all know the difference between DC at home and DC on the road. We saw it last season. We saw it a little bit this season. And, Wayne Rooney kind of complaining about the travel all around the country. I think it would be, a pretty big bump for him if they've got to go, if they can play a home game. Now, granted, if they're playing an away game in the Eastern Conference playoffs, they're not leaving New England most likely.
Right.
Or they're not leaving the East Coast. Maybe Toronto or Montreal is going to be the furthest they're going to have to travel.
Yeah.
But still, that mentality of being at home and allowing your home fans there and playing in front of your home crowd, and Wayne Rooney kind of being a bit of a showman. Same thing with Acosta, same thing with Fernandez. Picking their games up when they're in D.C., when they're at Audi Field.
Does it feel like Wayne Rooney's kind of sold out a bit?
It's hard to say you've sold out after the career that he's had, playing for his boyhood club of Everton, both at the beginning and the end of his career, playing for England and doing the things he did for the national team, for Manchester United, and then for everything he's done for DC United in the short year and a half that he's been here. So, look, the guy wants to go get some money. The guy wants to just kind of be a figurehead and have people applaud him just for being there. I'm not going to make a big deal about it, Mike. But
Okay.
I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So moving right along, the next game down, New England Revolution hosting Toronto FC at Gillette Stadium in New England.
I'm going to sit back and just let you handle this one, Mr. TFC.
So, hey, this is a big game in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. New England a little bit ahead of Toronto. New England had some good chances. They were playing well. Toronto FC was playing extremely organized defensively. Gets the... why are you waving to the camera?
I'm waving to the camera, Mike. I'm going to give a little
Little
hello
love
to
to
the
the
people on
YouTube
YouTube right
I
now.
start talking about TFC, and he's like, hi, everybody out there in YouTube land.
Yeah, that's right. I'm letting them know that I'm here too, listening along with them. But you were saying, New England,
was saying.
you got my undivided attention, Mike.
All right, so...
New England had some good chances.
Had some good chances. TFC was playing extremely well at the back, which is very weird to say for a TFC squad. And then all of a sudden, TFC pounces. Benzene gets his first goal in a TFC kit.
Oh, that's a name we haven't said in a long time.
Well, he just came on to TFC about a month ago, so,
All the more reason why we haven't said the name. But even so, like, you think after a month of a team who's trying to make a playoff push, if the guy's going to contribute and they bring him up for a reason, we'd have been talking about him a little bit by now. But it's good to finally get his name on the podcast.
Yeah, so he gets in there, scores the goal. TFC's up 1-0, hitting around the 75th, 80th minute, and you're like, okay, well, man, TFC might go on the road here and get a big win, get them firmly into that playoff position, and then Quentin Westberg with a howler. Gustavo Bo, the new signing for New England. I don't even know if we can say new signing anymore. He's been around a while, and
he's made his presence known for a while.
He has definitely made his presence known. He shoots one from about 6 or 7 yards outside the box. Easy save for Westberg. Slips right under his arm and into the back of the net. 1-1. This one ends up with a draw. Look, Toronto getting a point on the road in an Eastern Conference playoff matchup. It's a good result. But when you lose that 3 points, you had that 3 points there, to give it up, to only get one, it's disappointing. And I'm just saying, man, it might be time for Alex Bono. Quentin Westberg, he's come in, he did okay. I mean, this is a lot of talk was that Westberg has just done so well since he's come in. He's not. This team is still fighting for a playoff position with the amount of talent that they have. He hasn't won a ton of games. He hasn't been extremely great at the back. The defense hasn't helped that much. But maybe it's time for Bono. I'm just saying. I think that you got to give this guy another shot. He has the talent to be there. I mean, just a few months ago, we were talking about Bono being in competition with Zach Steffen, who got signed by Man City. Look, Steffen won that competition, hands down. There's no doubt about it. But you're in that conversation, and now all of a sudden you're behind a guy who lets in a lot of goals, doesn't play extremely well, gives up some howlers. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Maybe they got to take a page out of the hockey playbook up there and start switching goalies and get that new goalie bump, or that old new goalie bump. Bring it back.
There you go.
You know what I'm talking about, hockey people, Toronto people. But the next game was probably the big Eastern Conference game of the weekend. Philadelphia Union hosting Atlanta United. And the Union, this was a statement game for them.
It was.
They beat Atlanta United for all the accolades and all the accomplishments and how great Atlanta has played this season, but for a few weeks early on. The Union beat them 3-1. It was a sound victory for the Union, and we saw a lot of buzz on social media and in the broadcast booth. First of all, what impressed me was Atlanta scores in first half stoppage time, and then the Union come out and drop 3 in the second half. Right. That is an impressive feat to begin. But what does this game really mean in the larger MLS picture, Mike? Some people are saying, whatever, Philly's been the better team all year, it's their year, I'm not surprised they beat Atlanta. I kind of fall into the opposite camp where I'm like, this was an upset. This was the Union saying, no, we're going to keep first place in the East. You're going to come into our building. We're going to win here. We're going to let you know that we are now top dog in the Eastern Conference. Can't say the whole league because of LAFC, but to me, it was an upset. It was a statement game, and you should see the Union approach the playoffs with a lot more confidence because of this game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a team where you're really going into this game. You're thinking Atlanta United just won U.S. Open Cup. They've been playing extremely well lately. This is a game where Atlanta's probably going to take that next step, go on the road and beat a Philly team and say, hey, wait, Philly, you're not quite there yet. You can't quite hang with us yet. Well, now that really changes the picture after this result, especially going down a goal. And who else, right? Joseph Martinez, the guy, I think it's, 13 or 14 games straight.
It's at least
this
13,
guy,
yeah.
It's insane, that stat by itself. But then you go down to Atlanta, one of the fierce, great teams, and then you drop 3 in the second half to get that win. What's most important about this, not only the mental builder that it is for going through the rest of the season, but it's the points in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. All right? So now there's only 4 or 5 games left in the season. If Atlanta can't overcome Philly and they meet up in the quarterfinals or the semifinals of the playoffs or the Eastern Conference finals or whatever, this game's going to be played at Talon Allen Energy Stadium, whatever the hell it's called now in Philadelphia, Atlanta's got to go on the road. It's a lot different if Philly has to go to Atlanta and Mercedes-Benz with 70,000 strong, or Atlanta going on the road to Philly. That's a big, big difference. Philly proved with this game that, hey, this is their conference to win, and Atlanta, we're not messing around.
The other important thing about that first round bye, that number 1 seed, is rest. And people, I don't want to get into it too much because we've got the Western Conference games to round up now. But a lot of people were saying that Atlanta had the U.S. Open Cup games, and that kind of meant they played a lot more games, and so Philly had a rest advantage. But just kind of looking forward, I mean, the Union don't have it easy. They've got LAFC, Red Bulls, San Jose, Columbus, and NYC to end the season, whereas Atlanta has Columbus, Cincinnati, San Jose, NYC, Montreal, and the Revs to end their season. So a couple common opponents, but I might have to give Atlanta the edge on wrapping up their season. They've got a game in hand. They've got to go to Montreal and then come home to play New England to end that season. So I think they might pick up 2 wins, and maybe that decision day, you'll see Atlanta reclaim that number 1 spot.
Hey, it could be, but you also have, you go to Montreal, who's going to be fighting for a playoff spot 2 weeks out.
Well,
They're
Daniel
not gonna be
Lovitz will still
eliminated.
be on international. Sorry, I can't.
Okay.
I just can't let that go.
I'm with you, man. It's fine. But then you get New England, who is right in that, you've got a team in Atlanta who's going to be firmly in a playoff spot. They've already clinched, I believe. And
Yes, Atlanta has clinched.
Right. So they've already got that spot, and you've got a team that's going to be fighting to get in just to save their season. It could pose some problems in those 2 last matchups.
I guess time will tell, Mike.
It
Time will
It
tell.
will.
So good transition game here as we move out west. Dallas hosting Cincinnati, and Dallas does what teams do to Cincinnati, the expansion team. They beat them 3-1. Dallas, I sent this tweet out. They've got 16 goals in the last 5 games, and one of those games they got shut out by the Galaxy. So if you take away that 16 goals in 4 games, Dallas.
They're scoring.
Yeah, they're scoring goals. Their offense is carrying this team without a doubt. And if they can keep this pace up, if they can keep scoring 3-4 goals a game, watch out Western Conference, because that is how you beat LAFC.
Yeah.
You're not going to stop their offense. You just got to keep up.
Yep. Yeah. Dallas with a good win there over Cincinnati. Sporting Kansas City 1-0 over Houston Dynamo.
What happened to the new coach bump in Houston, Mike?
Yeah, well, that didn't really work out very well. But they didn't name a new coach yet. It was just an interim coach, so maybe,
Okay, I'll give you
maybe
that.
there's that.
Good win for Kansas City. Really happy to see Johnny Russell get the goal. He has been a bright spot for an injury-plagued, exhausted, underperforming Sporting Kansas City. Even if he's not scoring goals, just his attitude and his hustle and his interaction with the fans, he's been a bright spot for them. But great 3 points for Kansas City, Mike, because they are now 5 points out of the playoff line, behind Portland and LA, and then 6 points behind Dallas. So
It's not happening.
you don't think
No.
so? You don't think there's that glimmer of hope
No.
for Kansas City? Nothing? No?
Not happening.
All right. Well, let's go to another team where it's not happening. Vancouver. Nothing was really happening for Vancouver. Saved their lone goal in a 3-1 loss to NYCFC. And here's your Eastern Conference sleeper favorite. With Philly playing above and beyond anything they've ever done, with Atlanta being the consistent power, with the Red Bulls kind of being that team you know about, NYCFC has been that playoff failure.
Yeah.
You always get there and you never do anything. Is there something different this season, Mike? Is NYCFC a cup contender?
No. Until they prove it in the playoffs, I can't see it. This is a team who has struggled now. The playoff format change might help them a little bit with the one-off situation, because over 2 legs they weren't getting it done over the last few years.
Well, they got that
But-
great home field advantage. So
do.
if they get a home field game that first round, I can't see them losing.
Right.
In-
No, you
in
got a
Yankee
point there,
Stadium.
for sure.
Yeah.
But, look, I until they prove me wrong, until they prove their critics wrong, until they win some playoff games, you cannot say look, over the regular season, they've been fantastic. Over the past few years, they've been second, third, fourth in the East. They've been making good results in the regular season. They can't get it done in the playoffs. Maybe this is the year that changes that, but until they do, I can't give them the props.
That's all fair points there, Mike. Next couple of games, just quickly. Portland beats Real Salt Lake 1-0. Probably what I would have expected, generally speaking, except you've got RSL, who is, fifth,
Right?
versus a Portland team who's eighth. So maybe in standings-wise and form-wise, it's a bit of a surprise, but I still think Portland is probably the better team overall.
Yeah.
They just haven't been playing up to it to this point. Then you got San Jose just stomping Orlando City 3-0. There were some good tweets out there about Dom Dwyer and about Orlando City, and James O'Connor should be at fault for playing Dom Dwyer, and my response is, no, you're paying him that much. He's still probably your best option, which doesn't say much right now for how Orlando City's constructed the roster. So I think his hand has been forced. He needs to play Dom Dwyer, but unfortunately Dom Dwyer forgot how to play.
Yeah.
But good for San Jose. You got to beat the team in front of you, and they smoked them.
And they did. They took care of business.
Biggest games in the Western Conference were the last two games. Just the way MLS seems to draw it up week in and week out, right?
Sundays are national TV games, of course.
Seattle Sounders in a thriller, 4-3 over LA Galaxy. Rolled on with a beautiful game, an early goal, a late goal, and just a motor in the midfield. Is Seattle the second best team in the West?
Ooh, that's tight. I don't know if I'd go the second best team. I think that the West is so close from 2 through 8 that I don't know if I can say if I can put them there as that number 2 team, but they're up there, right? They're in that conversation. Right now they're sitting at number 2 with 46 points out of 28 games, but they're just barely ahead of Minnesota United, barely ahead of San Jose, really one game ahead of FC Dallas and Salt Lake. So they're not far and above that second best team. Especially, they did get the win against the Galaxy, who were in second. Now they're in seventh. But it's going to be interesting. That Western playoff is just going to be great. Just how close everybody is.
Hey, what happens if the Galaxy don't make the playoffs this year, Mike? Do they just blow everything up? Like, that'd be 2 years with Zlatan where you don't make the playoffs. That'd be 2 years of having Rossi Alessandrini and Legit and rebuilding
Dos Santos,
and doing all, and they don't make the playoffs. Do you just blow it up, or do you just kind of say, "Well, that was another terrible draw that we had"?
Zlatan will ride off on a horse with like a pitchfork and be like, "I am Zlatan. I will not do this no more. I will win," and he'll go across town to LAFC.
Hey, they got their team. They got their DPs. He'll go to China and make another $20 million or something.
Hey, there you go.
Okay, last game, and what a shocker it was, Mike.
Yeah, big shocker.
LAFC at home in the bank loses 2-0 to Minnesota United. Was this like grudge match for Minnesota? Like, can't believe we lost to Atlanta. We had a trophy right there for us to take it. We're gonna come home and just show everyone what we're still about.
I think it was more the side of LAFC having clinched the top spot in the West before this game even happened based on the other results throughout the league. And once I saw that they had clinched that top spot, I got a little nervous because I picked LAFC, and it, of course, did not go that way. But I got a little nervous because I'm like, they're probably going to, just not show up for this game because they've clinched. They've got everything. They're not getting caught for the Supporters' Shield. Okay, it's not happening. They've wrapped that up. They're number 1 in the West. They've got the bye. There's nothing else to play for. Now it's just a challenge of Bob Bradley saying, let's get focused. Let's play our best soccer going into the playoffs because we're going to need it because it is that one-game playoff, and somebody like Portland or Real Salt Lake or anybody can come in and have a hell of a game, and then we're out. So I think this was a kind of a letdown game from LAFC because they had clinched everything that they needed to clinch, and Minnesota was pissed off that they lost the Open Cup. Adrian Heath has a lot to prove in Minnesota for leaving Darwin Quintero on the bench for the U.S. Open Cup final, and I think this is kind of the results of those extracurricular activities.
Additionally, Minnesota had Player of the Week Mason Toy, 2 goals in this game, both in the first half, 25th and 29th minute. So great outing by him, assisted on one of them by Jan Gregus. I mean, he has just stepped his game up as a playmaker. The other thing, Vela did not dress. He was not available for this game, so either he's just a little, he's still got the hamstring a bit, but that's kind of a self-preservation for him. But you also saw that Beitashour started on the bench. You saw that Mark Anthony Kaye was on the bench. Tyler Miller. Right. These are guys who are usually starting.
Again, one of those games where you know that you've done everything you need to do out of 34 games, and this is game number 29 or 30, and you've got a little bit of time to just chill out and get some rest those legs from the long summer grind, and get ready for the playoffs, get ready for those 4 games that are going to be important come October, and hopefully they can get things going for their standpoint. I think the rest of the league would love to see some upsets, but from LAFC's side, they want to get ready to go into the playoffs, get a little bit of rest, and then start to build that team back up for the playoff run.
Okay, watch what I'm about to do. Listen to what I'm about to do here, Mike. Yeah, so LAFC has wrapped up the Western Conference, and we are wrapping up this episode. Whew, right about at the hour mark. We want to thank all of our listeners, everyone who's interacted with us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. At SOP Soccer on Twitter, at Sons of a Pitch Soccer on Facebook. Search us Sons of a Pitch Soccer on YouTube. Find us online, www.sonsofapitchsoccer.com. Also, big thank you to our sponsors, Donovan Food Brokerage and Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water. We also are looking for additional sponsorships so Mike can continue to grow his weekly pick'em, picks, predictions, plays, whatever you want to call them, on YouTube, so we can feature your product and talk your brand. Slip that in as Mike gets in all of his midweek predictions on YouTube. Just reach out to us, podcast at sonsofapitchsoccer.com, or direct message us on Twitter at SOP Soccer. But thank you especially to you, our listeners. Follow us along, join the conversation, spread the good word of American soccer and the Sons of a Pitch. Thanks for all you do, and we'll see you next week.